speakers. The first one is Tetsushi Sonobe. He's professor at National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies in Tokyo, Japan. And we also have Christian Kastrup, who is CEO, Global Solutions Initiative in Berlin, Germany. Without further ado, I'll give the word to Mr. Sonobe. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Andre. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to talk about sustainable development of the low and middle-income countries. So my talk is very simple, but I want to show one diagram, so I want to use PowerPoint slide. But is it? Okay, could you show the slide? Not yet. Oh, coming. Okay. Oh, that's kind of. Yeah, I hope I can finish in 10 minutes, but could be 15 minutes. Okay. Yep, so my topic is this, and then, yeah, context. So already the morning session, the speakers mentioned the world politics, technology, economy, and hence society and individuals' ways of behaviors have been changing rapidly and drastically. So in this background, cost of debt is very high after the COVID-19 especially. And also there have been foreign aid fatigues among the citizens of the developed economies. And also some groups in such societies have kind of antipathy to foreign aid industry. So less and less financial inflow is coming to the global south. So what to do? Yeah, of course, aid is declining. Then, yeah, solution is do it yourself, right? And then to do yourself, the good leaders will be needed. So the developing countries, emerging economy emerging market economies need good leaders. But although we will talk about do it yourself, but of course you are not alone. So regional and global collaboration, cooperation will remain very important or increasingly important. So the first, leading the nation. So already some people this morning mentioned the middle income trap. And then my successor at the Asian Development Bank Institute, current Dean and CEO, Bambang Brojonegoro from Indonesia, is so much obsessed by the topic of middle income trap. So he's keep emphasizing middle income trap, middle income trap. Then when I said to him, oh, Bambang, there is also a high income trap. So what kind of high income country do you want to be? That would be more important question. Then he said, oh, if we are trapped after becoming high income country, there will be no problem. So he is really focusing on middle income trap. But my answer is very simple, that if you don't have political stability and good leaders, it will be very difficult. So you have to wait and then change the leaders. So it is okay for the newly, those countries which newly become upper middle income country, they should enjoy every improvement and be happy. But don't be too happy too early, because the leaders and people may think the foundation for sustainable development has been firmly established, but not yet in reality. So before giving everything to the market and the private sector, there are lots of things that the government have to do. So continue the journey, but by switching gears, otherwise people feel, oh, this government saying all the same things. So that gives the public the kind of image that we have not been making progress. So changing gear is important. And also society change, economy size and structure change. So accordingly, the policy, development policy must be changed, right? So anyway, so long-term planning and then effective implementation will be the key. So there is no time for indulging themselves in, political game or money game. But unfortunately, some Asian upper middle income countries, as soon as they became upper middle, they began, enjoying too much. So that's the reason why the middle income. Because, Japan, Korea, Singapore, Taiwan, they had no difficulty in continue the journey to the becoming high-income countries. Of course, in Japan, we are suffering from high-income trap, but anyway. So changing gears will be needed, and then, of course, there are already the 5-year plans and the national flagship programs, but these things must be not just fifth, sixth, seventh plan, but kind of focus on the narrative, and then giving the people the sense that we are making progress, right? So the leadership must look decisive, timely, meaningful, and hence promising, right? And then make themselves or keep themselves very popular, and then establish long-lasting and stable, long-lasting, but not static, but dynamic leadership. So timely scaling up will be needed, especially in the area of infrastructure, hard infrastructure development. Your cities are so congested, transportation is not enough. So definitely you need to expand the infrastructure. Otherwise, diminishing marginal, product, and then the rate of the private sector investment will become, declining. So then the less and less finance will come to those private sectors. And then, of course, innovation is important. Initially, what is important about innovation will be bridging research and industry. So Taiwan's famous institute like Italy, that kind of application, emphasizing application of new technology to commercial will be very important. Later, you have to shift to the DARPA type, more drastic, radical breakthrough innovation institute will become more important. Japan didn't have this second type. That was part of the reason why Japanese innovation has been declining. Although Nobel Prize winners still coming, but we are stopping. And then, very importantly, inclusive institution is where we hold the key for further journey toward prosperity. So making people happy, so let them enjoy the development and prosperity, that will be very important. And then leader must remain popular. And then this is not supplementary, but really core, essential point. And then feel the kind of, let the people feel the incentive to work harder and then save more, right? So that will be important. Where it is? Yeah, this is a diagram I want to show. And then, but planning is not perfect because there are always areas and sectors that will be neglected, not highlighted enough by the National Development Plan or government projects. But don't worry. So thanks to the rapid or drastic reduction in transportation cost, communication cost, and other aspects of transaction cost, especially trust part. Okay. Trust is very important for any commercial activities. So those things have been improved hugely. So now the rural areas are no longer destined to remain peripheral or hinterland. They can be not the top of the top, but they can be a core or center. Okay? So agriculture, international tourism, creative economy. So different avenues now becoming more and more open. So rural areas can take advantage of those things to be more innovative and then also very prosperous. Small businesses too. Their market used to be only the domestic market, but thanks to e-commerce and others, they can directly start exporting very easily these days. So everybody should stand up and then connect their plans, business plans, or place-based policies, or regional or local development plans with the national development plan. Okay. So I know that Thomas doesn't like lobbying, but in this case, lobbying from those people will be very important. And but then, of course, where is finance? So toward the end of this morning session, the searching asked how to mobilize, those important resources, especially financial resources. Then, as I already said, the cost of debt is very high, and the rich countries should take responsibility for climate change mitigation, and also the very big projects like Hindu-Kush Himalayan glacial melt. So the impact of that kind of disaster, lots of flood, and eventually the huge shortage of water supply, that kind of problem must be solved by the multilateral development banks. The money is coming from rich countries. So then that means the developing countries, middle-income countries, have to finance their own development, especially the development projects that will have economic returns should be financed by themselves. Right? So of course, the very much externality type project, then it's very difficult to get economic returns. But more commercial type or more benefit will go to the locality or their own countries. Those projects should be financed by the developing countries themselves. Then how to do that? The first is increase the tax collection, improve the efficiency of the tax administration. The second is mobilize the people's saving. And then previously it was difficult because people didn't have the a bank account or any access to the basic financial services. But now, thanks to the digital or mobile, banking and financial services, almost everybody can have such kind of financial services, so they can save money in the financial institutions. And the money can be immediately be used in the productive investment. And then why not government of developing countries issue digital bond denominated in a local currency, and then with simple procedure for buying and selling. And then they will have no foreign exchange risks, because it's issued in their own currency. And then people can buy their own government bond from very small unit, from say 50 cents, and then they can save their own money, and then they can contribute to the development of their own country. So here is a diagram that I wanted to show you. Okay. So bottom is well-being. So human being need to be happy. So they need to have happiness. So they should be rewarded by their own achievement of economic development. So education, health, and housing, and then that kind of things will give the people motivation and to save, and then saving will be used for the scaling up the economic growth by more and more infrastructure development, which will result in the economic growth, and then convenience in transportation and others, and also safety, less and less risk of the flood and other disasters, and the resilience. Okay, and then other part of the development plans like innovation kind of things may be less directly related to people, especially the radical breakthrough type innovations will be used by people across the world. So that's why this circularity may be not so strong. But infrastructure stay in your own country, serving the people forever. So in that sense, the people are more, feel happiness and then being rewarded. They are motivated to, contribute more, and then the contribution will have a good result, and then that benefit will go back to the people. So this circularity is what Shamika mentioned, the virtuous circle or circularity. And then also, this is human flourishing, because people work hard for their own development, and then they are receiving the reward. And then please think about where is the space for the foreign aid. Okay. If foreign aid, like a JICA, is inserted somewhere in this diagram, what the people would think. Actually, those JICA people or DFID or USAID, they would join their occupation because they really wanted to share the joy and share the effort. They wanted to contribute, so they genuinely thought so. But more experienced officers, JICA officers, know that they are not really welcomed. If the development is successful, and then if JICA say, oh, we did, then the developing country people, no. They cannot, those developing country people cannot 100% be happy, right? So then the experienced JICA officers know that, and then they will not be really welcome. So they will think, oh, I would focus on money making, or especially not JICA, but JICA's consulting companies. They are, thinking, oh, this is our business, right? So, and then somehow, ordinary voters, without any experience in international development cooperation business, but they somehow know that something is wrong, so they don't trust that industry. So they are not very happy for their tax would be used for this kind of purpose. That's why I really, encourage that the developing countries' government should stand up and then do the domestic resource mobilization. And then my university is policy school, and then 2/3 or almost 70% of my students are mid-career government officials. And then my former student, like current Uganda National Development Bank chief economist, or the president of the Tanzania Development Corporation, or the very high-ranked Ministry of Finance officer at Ghana and other countries. Every former student say, we don't want to have foreign aid anymore. So,
Sir, may I ask you to wrap up, please?
sure, yes. And then, yeah, to increase this bottom part, well-being part, for example, I would also encourage not only the transportation and the energy infrastructure, but those resilient infrastructure, plus the infrastructure for well-being itself, like a public housing construction, like a bottom of this page, will be very useful because of this circularity. And then finally, international trade and cooperation. So Thomas is from Yale University, and Yale's economics tradition is emphasis of this two things, two rings, Schumpeterian growth, which is about growth through technological progress, because Schumpeter is immediately linked to innovation. And then Smithian growth means Adam Smith, so who emphasized the division of labor. And then this is growth through the expansion of commerce. And then both are key for the prosperity, and they are overlapping, of course. And then this should be pursued more and more. But at the same time, international cooperation need to be expanded. Although I'm very much negative about foreign aid. So not that kind of cooperation, but South-South cooperation type cooperations will remain or will become increasingly important, especially the hegemon and multilateral development bank have very limited power and ability. Okay, I should stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sonobe. Just very briefly, the issue of doing it yourself, which you pointed out, to countries in an era of reduced development resource flows and development cooperation, that is key. But my question to you would be, what should countries that lack tax revenues, that lack savings or have very low savings rates, particularly LDCs, what should they do in light of the fact also that we do not have a functional and operative global tax regime also to help them in that regard? You mentioned the middle income trap, and I think very rightly so you pointed to next in your presentation to the issues of technology and innovation, which are key to increase productivity, which seems to me the key to avoiding the middle income trap. In my own country, Brazil was the country that grew the most after Japan in the 20th century, but we did so by exploiting one particular factor of production, which is labor, right? And after that, we stagnated because productivity was by and large stable. It did not increase. So I think that's key. And finally, you also mentioned several times the need to keep people happy, which is key. But I also see that people nowadays are not happy for several reasons, and that's the reason they turn to leaders that offer simple but wrong solutions, right? And that's what right-wing populism is all about, in my view. And it's tricky to keep people happy nowadays because things that used to work before no longer work. Again, in my country's own experience, cash transfer programs, raising minimum wages, all of that, housing, it worked fine in the beginning of the century. Nowadays, it's not sufficient. People want more, in other words. And I'll stop here, and without further ado, I'll give the floor to our next speaker, Mr. Kastrup. Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will be brief. I think the great frame was already been well described this morning with the great conversation with Shamika, Deepak, and Sachin. I think it was really brilliant for the big picture, and I think all fundamentals have been set there, and it's about, of course, the national, individual, and also the international situation. I really can't agree more. And I think it's very interesting how we discussed it also on other fora and in other, so it's all a little bit equivalent, so this is quite an important thing. So, and it's really true, I think, that we probably do not have fully realized what it means that Bretton Woods is clearly coming to an end after 75 years. And I think we have seen that also when, say so, finally, also the financial center walked, for instance, went from the UK, Bank of England, to the central bank of the US. And right now I think that's a little bit homeless in a way. So I think we have to see how we can use also the end of the Bretton Woods system, which is clearly to be seen. Fragmentation is coming up, the geopolitics getting more, how you say, not independent, but it can walk also other routes. And of course, in the world of Me First or MAGA, also linked also to a kind of a political, industrial complex, which makes me also a little bit nervous, especially in the case of AI and digital technologies and what you can all do with these methodologies. I think we also enter into some areas where we already looked at, they were also mentioned this morning, but I still think where we are relatively far from really seeing the full force, how this might go wrong. And of course, there will be a lot of high-level talks, and there need to be very high-level talks, but how to make it work, say so, also on the ground. And I think this level that we, of course, all want to have, these G20, G7, BRICS relationships, this is all very worthwhile, but we need a whole system behind it, how to make it work, and what would be categories. Also using, for instance, foresight strategies, which were rightly mentioned also here in the program. I think it is also not about this high-level talk, sometimes it's also about the low-level talks. And I think where we should focus, also with a scientific input, of course, is really try, and this is what we started here in a way, and this is why I'm so happy about this meeting here in Nalanda University, that we really have to look for like-mindeds. We have to look for building coalitions of the willing. We have to do flexible geometries. And also, I think what is very important, at least when I talk to other, say, middle powers or bigger powers, I think the great strategy, as far as I can say for my last 10 years, is if you just talk about possible agreements, but not about the differences. Yeah? So if we can agree on something where everybody would say, yes, I will join that shop, I think this could be there are some probably issues where we can never have that. But generally speaking, I think this talking about just about possible agreements and not about what we do not like from the other, for me is a very important thing. So it also needs a multi-stakeholder approach. Also, this was already alluded to, and I think this is just the right way. It needs science, politics, people, and also the businesses. And I think, therefore, I would also make a little pledge for track 2 diplomacy. I think this is also more and more valuable, even to prepare then debates on a higher level. Also, track 1.5 sometimes might fly. And this is, last but not least, also a little bit the idea of this organization I have the honor to chair since a year now. It was born from the first German G20 presidency 2018, but it's now an independent NGO that we really try to foster these ideas also in very well connection here with the think tank group, ADBI group, but also with other contacts. And we are right now also started with some friends in the US that we try to pitch a kind of a alternative G20. And I'm very happy that we also will engage in that group. And so this is what we will do. If some of you would like to join our Global Solution Summit, 1st and 2nd of June, you are very welcome. And then we can pursue these ideas and preparing really a strategy, of course, then scientifically based, to make it right and not go from one era to the next one. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, Mr. Kastrup, for calling to our attention the fact that we haven't really as of yet grasp the dimension, you know, of what's happening, you know, and how this might be very far from the bottom, if you if you will, and yeah, and you know, and the corporate underpinnings of the MAGA agenda and of Me First or America First, and the need to bring other sectors into these talks as well, right? To bring, as you put it, the talks to low levels and multi-stakeholder, including science, politics, business, and others. So, okay, now we have a number of commentators which will follow. I will ask each to try to limit their talks to 5 minutes. I know it's not much, and it hurts me to do so, but we really are pressed for time. So, the first commentator is Sharan Singh. He's CEO and founding director of eGrow Foundation. Where are you? Yeah. Great, sir. You have the floor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sachin, for getting me here, and also for organizing this fantastic development dialogue. So important, so urgent. We need to do it. I'll try to restrict myself to 5 minutes. And I hope I'll succeed. I just want to bring 3-4 things, though they have been told in the morning, both by Professor Shamika and Professor Deepak, but I thought I'll just flag them and then build my logic for the conclusion that I want to drive. I think at this point of time, the world is at a cusp of a very different situation. We have changed. And the future is extremely different from what we had set up the SDG goals. The rules have been tossed away, as Professor Deepak mentioned. AI is about to begin in a very big way. In the morning, it was being discussed. Today is a Women's Day, and this could impact women the most. Of course, it could impact health, education, and urbanization. The demographic trends would worsen with AI taking over. And in demographic, there is no neutrality. Either it's a dividend or it's a disaster. The climate, we are at a catastrophic situation as far as climate is concerned, but I always wonder, does war add to the climate crisis and the type of ammunition which is used? Finally, I think we are back in 1930s, when nationalization of the type of nationalism that led to the World War II. This is where we are. Now, let me bring two things to your notice. To my left is Sonobe. Japan had the worst of decades that they lost. Didn't happen accidentally. Plaza and Louvre Accord are fresh in our mind. When Britain, Europe, and America could not tackle or address the rapid rise that you were recording. I would also like to mention, while I was working at the IMF, in my interaction with one of the giant oil-producing countries, he asked me a question, Dr. Singh, to whom does oil belong? The oil which is under my soil, to whom does it belong? To you, as an Indian, emerging country, needing energy, or to America? Or to me and the 100 generations before me and 100 generations that will come after me? I had never thought about that question while I was evaluating the international reserves that the world held. That set me to think, we think differently, and that has to be accommodated, and one rule may not apply to all. Now, Professor Deepak, I have been working the Reserve Bank for many years. After the Asian crisis, we had started thinking of new international economic order, and Bimal Jalan, our governor then, wrote a speech which I assisted him in writing. Even then, 30 years ago, we were worried, where is the financial world taking us into? I would now like to say, it reminds me of Robert Mundell, the father of the euro. Why did euro come into existence? Just to counter USD, the US dollar hegemony? I still remember vividly the war that took place in Harvard. I was a witness to it in September 2003. Larry Summers and Trichet fighting it out. Larry Summers saying, why did you need the euro? And Trichet saying, At least not saying because of you, but saying I needed it, otherwise you were overshadowing us tremendously. There was a need, there was a requirement, and that was met. So now, because I have just 5 minutes, I don't want to stretch more. I would like to now say, where am I heading to? I think what we need now is focused coalitions with a purpose. As I said, the key issue is employment, is labor utility. If the labor is free in a country like ours, where our average age is 28 years against the world's 30 years, and 38% of our population is below 19 years. Every year for the next 19 years, we're adding 1 crore people into the workforce. Our focus is labor. In case we don't keep them engaged and busy, we are in deep trouble. I would also like to mention that sustainable development of the planet has become very, very important, knowing that what we have witnessed in COVID. It was a planet as a whole and not one country against the other. AI is also going to change that. Country by country is not the norm now. It will be the planet as a whole. So we are thinking in terms of the planet now. The American world is used to lobby. And I think we will have to lobby. Who will lobby? I think the time has come. We have tried the regional blocks, BRICS, SAARC. I think strong Asia, strong Africa, and Latin America are important. I would then conclude, now it is not only an issue of South and South versus North. Because of the climate and AI, and we have seen labor unutilized, unoccupied, unemployed in any part of the planet can be a threat to the rest of the planet. So therefore, I'm saying it's not only South and South versus North, now it is North and South to come together. And to conclude, sir, I would like to say, can we experiment for a war holiday for next 25 years? And I think we should pitch for that. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Singh, for making a number of important points. The next speaker is Anbu Mozi Ventakachalam, and my apologies if I mispronounce your name.
You are correct, okay.
Please, sir, you have the floor. Let me just introduce you first. He's Director of Research Strategy and Innovations in Area, Jakarta, Indonesia.
Okay, thank you, Andre, and I do agree with these first two interventions made by Professor Sonebe, and because I need to agree him because he is my professor, and and the second is Kostov is coming far away from Berlin, so it is our courtesy, but I do agree, and the thing is sustainability development, we still have the weak fundamentals, and second thing is Washington consensus is not working, and we need to find the alternatives. But I lived and I worked in 3 different late 1950s. They fine-tuned the education with the nutritious policy. It worked. Basically, government borrowed the money from outside. They invested in it, built the infrastructure that has been translated into the developmental outcome in 70s and 80s. Now it is arguably one of the most prosperous states in India. Second, I went to Japan, and Japan is one of the classical example, and when you can have the high growth and still you can make this equality happen, that basically the social justice. I think a few weeks back, and we discussed it with Sonabe and on it. That is a very kind of a miracle, and where there is a social harmony, industrial competitiveness, and then economic growth happened for 60 years. Now they are struggling, I think. And third one is I'm now in Jakarta and looking at these 10 small and medium-sized economies that formed one single market, moving towards a single market. There is an export-oriented led growth. Now they have been very successful in the past 3 decades. Now the frictions are coming from the sustainability and the social equity side of issue. So seeing these 3 models, and they all work together for a certain period of time. After that, they lose their relevance, and it need to be revisited. And where there is our innovations comes in. if you look at this framework and this three model framework, and these three models are getting increasingly stressed out. Basically, that is where my intervention today comes in, and there are three major stresses is coming in. One is, as we discussed, I think Professor Singh also mentioned, and this global defragmentation that is happening at a longer speed and higher speed, and the scale is very much. Basically, there are three gravity centers. One is in the US, it is completely believe in the market forces. Market doesn't work for the sustainability, we know it. And then Europe, which is very much ideal. They wanted to see that is the harmony taking place. And they are correcting measures, and they expect others also to follow their standards. And third one is coming from the East Asia, and Japan, Korea, and China. They believe in technology and the infrastructure. So what the rest of the countries, west of the global south, is they need to surf if they don't innovate on their own. That is what's happening. And sometimes they look into US, sometimes they look into Europe, and sometimes they look into Tokyo or Beijing. And that is the case, that there is really we need to find a way. That's why I wanted to see, and I wanted to make an emphasis, there is an India and the ASEAN partnership can help it, and help on three aspects. The first stressor is the global fragmentation. I think Professor Singh also mentioned, and we are resilient. This region, India and ASEAN, are resilient during the 1997 and 2008, and during also the COVID. So we have the fundamentals of finding there is a Chiang Mai initiatives that was invented, and then later I think the COVID also program, this ASEAN has the comprehensive recovery framework that help. So we have that formulas how we can work together. And the second thing is the climate change, and this is another stressor. I think most of the shocks, the future shocks, will be absorbed by South and Southeast Asia, because here we have a more population density. Our economies are growing at the faster rate, 8 to 9%, and then most of this adaptivity, our adaptivity capacity is very much limited. So here I think India and ASEAN need to work together and build how that existing frameworks, for example, sustainable finance framework, that can define where the next future infrastructure will be going in, can help in. And that could be aligned with this framework that is shown by Professor Sonebe. And third one is the digital public infrastructure, or the digital economy opportunities. So we know that our societies are unequal, both in the India and both in the ASEAN. And these digital opportunities are not fully utilized. It will further aggravate that inequality. Rural and urban, and some selectors and some urban centers will be moving from, others will be losing it. The consequences will be much more severe. So here there is India has the formula, I think we have been discussing during the India's G20, that is the digital public infrastructure. And now it is moving towards, that is expanding to the e-commerce platforms has been coming it. They are showing the kind of ways that is where that is the regional framework, some kind of sub-regional framework that could be sandwiched between the global framework and the national actions could be aligned. I think it could be also utilized for the achieving the sustainable development goals. So here I think, I don't know about what Berlin and what Tokyo is thinking, and there is also an effort by RBI and to using this digital money for facilitate the trade finance. So it is a kind of another way of working towards the de-dollarization of this trade, and I think where there is a BRICS will be coming together. Maybe now there is about 8 countries has been signed into that kind of UPI system. It could be extended further the global south. That could be an alternative for this dollar trade. So my sense here is India and working together with ASEAN, the global south, including the BRICS, we can find an alternatives. And this fundamentals of the alternatives is that is the digital transformation and the green transformation. And with the regional cooperation framework, I think this Nalanda dialogue can deliver a message from track 1.5 to track 1. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Vitakash Shalom. Thank you for spelling out different models of development that the Global South can follow. The next speaker is Mr. Ashyut Prasad Wago. He is Vice Chancellor of Kathmandu University. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for invitation, Professor Sachin. I think let me start with my own news. We have just got the election result after a very disruptive September 8 and 9 Gen Z movement, and Prime Minister in waiting is a 35-year-old musician and rapper. And this party has swept more than two-thirds of majority in the parliament. And it has done very interesting thing. It has obliterated all old parties, communist, socialist, nearly obliterated. That's first thing. So are we entering into the world of politics without ideology? So this is not only limited to Nepal. I think we are in a very restive world. The region, we have refused to understand the new generation, their expectations. And since we are in the development dialogue, the old guards completely failed to deliver the development, or the dividend of the development, or is it perceived that it failed? So it is such a drastic situation we need to consider, which we are not willing to, because these old politicians were not willing to listen to them, and we replicate them. People of my age, we are sitting here and we pretend that we know what we know is sacrosanct, and there is complete communication gap between this generation and with us. And our intellectualism and scholarship is not touching it at all. Why I'm saying this? We are repeating the word social contract so much, but what is the society today? Is it the society? We knew our neighbor, we knew our clan, we knew our professions, we were physically in contact? No. We are creating Facebook society. We are creating maybe the Instagram society. There are no political manifestos influencing the voters. It is the social media influence the voter today, and when AI is coupled with it, we are going to be in the next level. So forget about who finances it. So how do we understand these young minds who are at least 7 hours on average on a screen? Their mindset. That's the global data from International Society of Internet. So we intellectuals have become more self-congratulatory, as if we know everything, and we have failed to recognize this aspect. That's the first point I want to make. Second point, a little bit linked to it, is the fulcrum of development model so far had been the democracy. If we assumed whether if there is democracy, there is economic decision making is better. But from the both end, the democracy based on the multi-party adult franchise, from my example of Nepal, is obliterated. From above, we have got Trump, who exported democracy seemingly everywhere in the world. At least they pretended that they are the real global custodians of democracy, is now dissipating very, very fast, I would say. So the democracy no longer remains a fulcrum for democratic debate. And the economic growth, I think, we focused more on growth. Why the developed economies are not growing is, to grow, you have to be indulged in the more wastage of thing. If you can throw every model of iPhone, even if it is useful, to grow, you have to throw it out. So you have to use more plastic, more packaging packets, regardless of climate impact and all. So growth is being equated to wastage economy. I have got data, but I am given 5 minutes, so I don't want to go into it. The third point I want to make is the global macroeconomics. See the global debt distress. Japan is here. The debt to GDP ratio is 237% today. And US to 137. We are giving example of Singapore. In development discourses, is 125% of the debt GDP ratio. What we are saying as an economist, are we saying the government with negative net public worth as great? Are we debating that? And in addition to that, we are allowing the governments to spend on war, hugely on war, regardless of their GDP ratio. So that is very, very, there are other examples. India, China, they are approaching 85-90% of the, but two countries, about $110 trillion, how much, about $1 trillion of global debt, two countries, China and US, is about 57 trillion. So is it being global superpower being also being able to have a larger public debt? If that is so, why we are on theorizing the budget consolidation in the developing countries? So we are not entering into real debates in that. And fourth point I want to make about the institutions and South-South dialogue. When we are talking about the Britain words no longer existed, there was a definitional dichotomy. The world did not include, the word world, they said, when this was created, did not include the developing part of the world, India, China, or the poorer countries. Those instruments, those global institutions were not meant to these countries. I don't want to be very harsh on that. But that's not my worry today. But the institutions we are creating today, like we created BRICS, and it is liquidating practically without being effective. And we are believing in the multiplicity of these institutions like SARC, BIMSTEC, SCO, ASEAN we are talking about. But the real instrument for economic integration, we are not exploring, we are not customizing. We are still looking at these development debates, the lexicons, the lingo, we are looking through the Western prism. We are in Nalanda. My proposal would be, could there be an orientalization of this development debate, which is necessary, which is possible, I think, when we are at the climate crisis. We are at the cusp of mental health epidemic, we are resorting to meditation. When we talk about the climate change, we are resorting to small is beautiful type, the Buddhist studies type. But unfortunately, whether we agree or not, we are talking about decolonization, the intellectualism, but we are forced to debate that in English. Should we be doing that in Nalanda? Is the Nalanda heritage come from the English language treasure of knowledge? This is just the question. Just to see, is there an other alternative for that discourse? I think I have got only 2 points to make. One, we must not allow the powerful countries to weaponize the mammoth data that has been generated, that has not been touched so far in discussion, that are becoming a next level of time bomb, the data. Who holds it, how they use it. Second, climate crisis, of course, is there. Fundings, I beg to differ as Professor Sonobe about that. We so far said that the government should do this, government should do that, but if we want to develop, we want to go into development path, there is no alternative to unlocking the private resources, even in the smallest of the developing countries. Because there is resource, we know, but we are not being able to unlock it, so it is not being optimized. So it is very critical. The final point I want to make it.
Please wrap up, sir.
Yeah, I'm wrapping up. So one, we need to humanize the development. What does that mean? As an economist, I have coined and working on it the concept called humanomics. You can look into my TED talk about 15 minutes. So if economics is to solve the economic problem of the humanity, it must have a human angle, not the growth angle, not the skill angle. It has to have a human angle. Second, I agree with Professor Singh, the war holiday, but it is not going to happen. Why? If you are allowing private sector to invest heavily in industrial production of arms and ammunition, the aircraft carrier, the development of the fighter jets. It is the investment that must get profit. As long as you treat as an industry and allow to export in any pretext, so war holiday is not possible unless we stop that. The final one, the collaboration has no alternative. Kathmandu University has just hosted the Secretariat of Himalayan University Consortium, a consortium of 101 universities of the Hindu Kush Himalayan region to study. The Secretariat was housed in Isimod, very famous research institute, and we are having the Vice Chancellors and Directors retreat on 18th and 19th. Many of you have got the invitation. I would like to join here. At least we can have enough time, not like this and say everything in 5 minutes. We'll have 5 hours to think about the alternative ways of development paradigm. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, Professor Waggle. Number of provocative points. Actually, historian Niall Ferguson has seen the high level of indebtedness of hegemonic countries as a harbinger of their decline. But I'll leave it at that. Next speaker is Ms. Li Li. She's Associate Professor at College of International Development and Global Agriculture in Beijing, China. I asked the following speakers to please keep their time to 5 minutes. I know it's not much, but it's all we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, host. Good afternoon, distinguished panelists and guests. I'm Li Li from China Agricultural University. We are shortened as CAU. It's my great honor to be invited to sacred Nalanda University, a cradle of ancient Asian civilization, where Xuanzang, the venerable Buddhist master from the ancient east land of China to the west land of India. He spent 17 years from China to India. But for me, the first time for me to come to India, it only cost me 1 day. So I think there's no reason for me not to shorten 10 minutes to 5 minutes. Yeah. And you know, when Xuanzang was trying to come here during the 17 years, he tackled 81 challenges during the journey. We have a novel, Journey to the West. Why 81? People say it's because it's 9 multiply 9, because 9 is the largest number in the ancient China in our mind. So I think that has been the earliest South-South and triangular cooperation, seeking for consensus among diversity, integrating Taoism, Buddhism with others toward global ultimate enlightenment for future development. So today, inspired by Professor Thomas Pogge, from Yale University in the morning, my sharing focus on reflections on how to internalize equity and ecology values into the post-2030 SDG. More importantly, how the Global South, together with the Global North, unite and lead the world towards the just trajectory in the turbulent world. Since I only have 5 minutes, I will try to shorten my 2-page script into a very short one. First, I think the internalization and the recognition of agriculture in macroeconomic accounting is lacked. Now China is having the 2 sessions, 两会, which is the annual sessions of the National People's Congress, NPC, and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, CPPCC. Together with the #1 central document, we call it 中央1号文件, and the 15th 5-year plan, the agriculture first strategy, in China we call it 重农战略 or 农业为首战略, is exploring ways for modernity through an agricultural revolution, which might be different from the industrial revolution. The macroeconomic prosperity is believed to be achieved through the triple core values of agriculture, which is benefiting food security, ecological barrier, and rural employment support. And second, the internalization of a practical urban-rural equity pattern hasn't been realized in the current international institution. Unlike the one-sided urbanization model, China have promoted the two-way flow of capital, technology, and talents between urban and rural areas through policies such as the Rural Revitalization Strategy and the Urban-Rural Integrated Development Pilot Zone. Since 2015, our team leader, Professor Li Xiaoyun, have initiated the city-driven rural revitalization pilot villages in scores of villages in Yunnan province, which is in the southwest of China, the most poverty-stricken areas, making cities making cities the active actors, repaying villages, because the cities have benefited a lot by marginalizing the rural areas. So currently, our rural areas should be getting more from the urban areas. That's our logic. And from the government side, there have been a lot of personnel policy innovations, providing motivations to encourage talents and returnees to the villages. We have the rural CEOs, which is cooperated with CAU and the Tencent company, which is providing the WeChat. We initiated the Rural CEO project in 209 counties in 17 provinces, enabling the youth entrepreneurs to be deeply rooted in the villages. And this version have been internationalized by another 2 projects to Africa and Southeast Asia in countries like Kenya, Laos, and Indonesia. Third, I think the internationalization of green development hasn't been realized in the current regime. China has been actively engaged in the Clean Development Mechanism, CDM, and the Kyoto Protocol, fully utilizing the cap and trade mechanism, carbon trading, for the triple values of economy, equity, and ecology. Emerging as the world's largest CDM host country in 2006, China increased public finance from carbon selling toward poverty alleviation. Ningxia Hui Autonomous Region have been such a beneficiary. And according to what I know, in 2023, India was also trying to provide a soil carbon sequestration project to Vera, the largest voluntary carbon trading platform, using the application of soil. In West Bengal, in the West Bengal state of India, and which could at least earn some money from the global market and benefit the poor. So in my mind, by exploring localized development paths, China, India, Brazil, Indonesia, and those global South countries have been setting models for what could be like as prototypes of the post-2030 SDGs. So the practices and the cases I mentioned today might provide some of the examples what are not one-size-fits-all models. The Global South is empowered by this era to create more concentricity over centrifugality of the core periphery structure, for which the Nalanda Development Forum could provide a platform for more diverse modernity. Thank you very much. Welcome to China, and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you, Ms. Li. I myself and a number of people in this room, we have visited Yunnan province and seen firsthand the work that Professor Li Xiaoyun has done there. So a very inspiring presentation. Okay, next we have Nitya Nanda, is professor and former director, Council for Social Development in Delhi. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you,
Please try to keep it at 5
Nalanda,
minutes.
for getting me here. We have a mission life in India, which is about lifestyle for environment. It's supposed to be a global mass movement that would replace mindless consumption that is happening today with mindful utilization of resources. We have climate change problem, we have resource depletion problem. But at the same time, we're also talking about Viksit Bharat. So obviously, sometime people ask, are there contradictions? Can we have Viksit Bharat without depleting resources? But Viksit Bharat has to be understood not simply as a developed economy with a very high income. We have been talking about, for the last 3 decades or so, resource efficiency, decoupling of growth from resource use. In the sense, GDP will grow, but resources consumption would not grow. Climate change or emission will not grow, but that has not been happening. Professor Puge was talking about planetary boundaries, and if you believe the Stockholm Resilience Center, they have assessed that out of the 9 areas they assessed, only 2 areas we are still within boundary. In all other areas we have transgressed. So all this discourse about resource efficiency and all did not yield any result. So now this discourse about, can we think about well-being, decoupling well-being from growth itself? Can we think about well-being without high income? Now let's talk about one well-being that can be a proxy of many things is life expectancy at birth. Now out of say 200 odd countries, only about 45 odd countries have life expectancy which is higher than 80. And who are those countries? It's not probably surprising that US is not within that 45 countries, despite very high income. And the country with lowest income that could achieve that 80 years life expectancy is Maldives. And the per capita income is way below most of the developed countries, but they could achieve it. And if you look at other countries, they're like Chile, they're like Costa Rica. My point is not here that Maldives or Costa Rica or Chile do not have any challenges. My only limited point here is that you can achieve high well-being without having very high income. So that is the idea. Now, if you look at those countries and many other countries, what are the sources of that well-being? All these countries have something in common. They all have very clean air and clean water, which we are not able to ensure even in India. Maldives has, along with that, a very low income inequality. Otherwise, you would not be able to achieve that with, lower level of per capita income. If you look at countries like Chile and Costa Rica, they have a very different kind of cultural orientation where they, Nicoya diet is very famous. Their food habit, locally sourced fruits and vegetables, and water that has lot of mineral contents. What we do in India, our water is so impure that we are all going for reverse osmosis process, and in the process you are removing all minerals. And when you are removing minerals, you are inviting bone loss, you are inviting high blood pressure, right? Now, let me go back to the other dimensions of India. All these countries also have very high human development. Though I think human development concept is an improvement over GDP, it still gives much more emphasis on income because the income goalpost is up to $75,000. You don't need $75,000 to have high human development. That can be lowered. But more importantly, this sense of purpose in life, which they call plan de viva or buen vivir. Now, think about who is happy. Let me take you back to our Mahabharata. When Yudhishthira was asked who is happy, his answer was the one who is not in debt. We are talking about indebtedness. One who doesn't live in a foreign land. That has to be understood in this context. What he was meaning was that you are not away from your family, you are not away from your community, because that's an important part of your happiness. This is what these countries promoted. They have a lot of open space where community gather. you know. So this is also important part of happy life. Uh, so if you want to ensure that, we have to do a lot of homework. We have to ensure a lot of things. Now, with India, the resources are very limited. We have 18% of global population. We have less than 3% of global landmass. So obviously, challenges are very high. Now, this also tells you that the development models have to be very different from different countries. I'm not saying what is good for Maldives or Costa Rica would be good for India also. You have to think differently. So we have to think about a development model or the new development consensus that doesn't impose a straitjacketed model like Washington consensus on everybody. So you have a broader development consensus, but that also allows countries to have their own agenda. Now think about countries that have been talking about to have achieved a lot of things in terms of decoupling of emission. There is cleverness in that. Yes, if you take only about production, then they have reduced a lot of emission, but if you look at their consumption, it is not, because they have shifted energy intensive production to other countries, but their consumption level is still very high. So that's why this is very important. We have to understand happiness, and when you are talking about young generation, are they also understanding what will make them happy, or they are also very restless? So this, community and this, narrative, this discourse has to continue to understand, help all of us understand who is happy. Now, this session also has one point I would like to make, that urban, industrial, rural, linkages and transformation. Now, unfortunately, Bihar is linked to the urban areas of Delhi, Mumbai, and Gujarat, which is not a happy situation, which might be giving them higher income, but they are living in a situation where they are disconnected from their community, they're disconnected from their family, which will not make them happy. And this also ensures a lot of other environmental problems, because Delhi is probably, in my assessment, is living beyond its carrying capacity. The ecological distress that we have created in certain regions. So this balanced development is very, very important. I think I have got my time over, so I will stop at that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, Mr. Nanda, for stressing the point that growth or economic activity and income is not necessarily related to well-being, and that development should take levels of well-being into concern and give them a more central position in the debates. Now, we have two participations that are online, as I understand it. So next, only one? Oh, okay, good. Okay, so we save on time. So, Mohammed? Mohammed Indrawan is an ecologist, Research Center on Climate Change, Universitas Indonesia, Jakarta, Indonesia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, everyone from the city of Rain, Bogor, Indonesia. I would like to make 3 small queries or maybe comments relating to macroeconomic foundations that we spoke just now. So my 3 queries, it relate to the merits of diversity and co-benefits. So please let me go one by one very quickly. Firstly, whereas we often speak about threat to diplomacy and conflict resolution, for Southeast Asia, we also do track 1.5, meaning that Southeast Asia has salient forms, so non-interference, consensus building, relational trust. So this means a lot of promises with non-state actors and especially decentralized governance. This means that track 1.5 diplomacy can provide a significant channel for promoting climate diplomacy with keyword being facilitation of informal policy dialogue, state and non-state actors. So that's the first. The second relate to civic engagement. I take the regional approach taken by our group, including or led by Chulalongkorn University. It is called Civic Engagement 4.0, and it is done by involving civil society and also majors. We have majors symposium. So this is civic engagement in action involving both civil society and policy makers. The third and last query relate to the Dasgupta report. We would like to see in Indonesia if this can be applied. And so far, we have found a good example with Indonesian program called FOLU and other land use. Indonesia, of course, has more than 80 million hectares of tropical moist forest. So this is a big issue for development, climate, and mitigation and adaptation. And the key message here is that FOLU, it happens that my research group is promoting to bring the indigenous people and local communities. So the theme here or the philosophy is only when people attain welfare, then forests can foster. It is well proven in many places in Indonesia now. And the last is about the diversified system of belief and knowledge. For instance, in Indonesia, we have more than 700 languages. In Papua region alone, more than 400 languages and sub-languages. That means there is a lot of indigenous knowledge system, a lot of traditional ecological knowledge that we must guard by protecting the language. And the last thing is we look through the heuristic tool called Nature Future Framework. This is by IPBES. So it looks at nature as not only nature for its sake, but also nature for society, meaning it is instrumental. But above all, nature as culture, uh, whereby the relational is one with nature. So those are the three queries or the three comments. One is strong track for non-state actors. Second is testing Dasgupta in the field, and the third one is to give rise to multilateralism through diversified system of beliefs and knowledge. I'm sorry for rushing. Thank you again to Nalanda University and the organizer for this opportunity. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Indrawan, for your three comments and for keeping the time. I appreciate it. We have 5 minutes left. We still have to hear from Professor Mohanty, but if there's anyone with a strong desire to make a question from the audience, I think we should allow it. Yeah, Nicola?
Yes, it's not a strong desire for a question, but I would like to make a proposal because this afternoon we have heard absolutely compelling sets of insights, which are very complementary with what we heard in the morning, and probably will be seen as complementary as regards for tomorrow, right? And I think, Dr. Lilly, you were absolutely right. It's a bit frustrating to have 5 minutes after traveling for a day, but it's equally frustrating to have 5 minutes when we have such great series of ideas. And I was really thinking, probably not me alone, linkages with what you are saying about China and slash agriculture and slash the urban-rural complex, which is actually one question that was very much behind the rationale of launching the development dialogue, but also what Dr. Anbumoji mentioned in terms of South India, Southeast Asia cooperations and the role of ASEAN, and what was put on the table quite clearly with the existing sets of knowledge and how they are convincing or not as a buy-in from within the society, different according to various generations and so on and so on. So it's obvious that we will not be able to exploit fully those even this afternoon, maybe even in the full spectrum, right, of the dialogue. However, looking closely at our schedule, right, tomorrow we had a plan to spend about an hour proposing a book project that we are working on. We might not need this full time. I would like to suggest, under the supervision of Vice Chancellor and the team here, that instead we extend a little bit the time for the deliberations tomorrow. We will be able to share wherever the information regarding the book also, but in a much more compact time, and that for a number of the speakers today, but also we heard the very simple and, as usual, very lightly touched but very deep insights from our colleague Mohammed from Bogor, that tomorrow, linked with the third plenary, we take a little bit of time maybe to recirculate among a number of the intersections that have clearly emerged and that drive us a little bit beyond the usual whereabouts about the SDGs, the Agenda 2030, etc. So I would like to make this proposal. Dr. Mohanty, that does not give us too much time this very afternoon. I will pass it on to you under the guidance of our session chair. But if this is agreeable for each and every one, I would like to suggest that we have a robust final plenary under also the chairmanship of Stefan Klingenbiel tomorrow. If everybody agrees, then we could proceed likewise, so that we won't get out of this session this afternoon too much frustrated. Is it adopted? Yes. Is anybody against? No? Adopted, right. So, Mr. Chair, back to you.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea, Nicola, especially because Stefan does a much better job than I do in keeping time. And so, but...
You are absolutely excellent.
Yes.
1 minute small comment on the presentations. The first thing that actually, whatever we define sustainable development, but to realize it, it's not about only government and the market or the private sector. We need to bring in the government, a calibration amongst the government, the market, the community, and also the civil society. Our Vice Chancellor from Nepal, he was talking about the Gen Z. So it's all about the civil society also. So all these four stakeholders, government, market, community, and civil society, have to be brought in a calibrated manner to realize the envisaged objective of sustainable development, number one. And number two, mostly we talk about a binary kind of north, realizing this very objective, north versus south. I think even today also the north is not homogeneous in terms of their thinking. So we need to have also a calibration between the north and also the south. I think that would be the right approach to realize whatever way we define sustainable development in days to come. Thank you so much.
Thanks for that, Mr. Panda. So now I understand we have Professor Mohanty, right? Please, sir, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you, Chair. At the very outset, I would like to thank Professor Sachin Chaturvedi for inviting me to this August gathering. Yes, it is on. From the very beginning, from the morning, several issues are being discussed. It's very difficult to summarize them, particularly of this session. But what I observe is that in the global economy, macroeconomic imbalances are very much visible in recent years. Since 2023, global economy has slowed down to 2.7% as against the average growth rate of 3.2% during the period 2010 to 2019. So what we see that there is a growing debt crisis, particularly is very rampant with the small economies, which was highlighted by Sonobe, and also the help coming from Bretton Woods institutions, as mentioned by Castro, is not much in that case. So small economies have very little space to really revert the situation because of very limited space for them in trade and foreign direct investment. So therefore, what options they have got? Now, aid and aid for trade, they are also slowing down drastically. So therefore, the problem with the South, particularly with the small countries, are mounting. So what we see in the post-pandemic period is that growth is unequal growth rate, not only between southern countries, but also within the north. Immediately during the COVID, global economy went down to minus 3.1%. Immediately after that, in 21, it went up to 6.2%. And normalcy returned in 2022. Then again, we have a slowdown to a very large extent, and that unequal growth is very much visible between global north and global south, and in that way, global economy is highly fragmented in their what Venkatchalam mentioned. Now, if we saw that brief recovery in 2022, we can see in 2026. So that what we see that there is a huge stress of debt issue with the small countries. It is not the question of what is the quantum of debt, it is the question of debt servicing ratio. So that is quite mounting for the small economies. Wagli also mentioned about this point. Now, the whole debt issue is now got aggravated. Cost of servicing of debt and cost of debt, what Sonobe also mentioned, has been quite substantial, and how to meet them. Coming to the point of SDGs, that we see that when it all started, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi also mentioned about the relevance of SDG vis-a-vis MDGs, that it is inclusive growth, but its foundation is not yet established. What Sonobe has mentioned, and to some extent, Lily, you have also mentioned about it. We have seen the global experience that high growth can be resulted into equity. In case of Japan, what Venkatchalam said, and also with a low income, you can also have equity. What Nitya also mentioned in case of Maldives. So we have got all models that how we can really achieve equity, and that can very well achieved through SDGs. But what we see now, that achievement of SDGs is not possible. The targets may not be reached, and many times we have seen the models are not working perfectly well. We have not very strongly addressed the basic requirements of youth. Wagle mentioned about this point. On the top of it, the climate change and the achievement of net zero is also another important point, which many developing countries may not achieve it. Therefore, radical breakthrough is required, and what Sonobe mentioned, that resilient infrastructure is very much important in this case. Now, coming to issue how to really bring downturn in the global economy, how to reverse it, we have to really focus on trade and FDI, and who should be growth enablers. The fact is that the developing countries have really catching up very fast, but still the gap is too much. The trade inequality within the South is very much also we can see the similar kind of trade within the north. So what we see, there is a strong convergence between the share of developed and developing countries in the global trade, which is narrowing down very fast. Already 45% has South has already reached 45% of global trade, and it is also quite converging in FDI, both in terms of inward FDI and outward FDI. There is already convergence between north and south, but it is not really very strong in case of trade in services, and that is primarily because of digital trade, which Venkatachalam have mentioned. So in case of developing countries, the trend is showing that developing countries are more equal with the north in finished products, not in intermediates. They are more symmetric with the north in terms of trade in goods, but not in trade in services. And therefore, if you want to have more convergence between north and south, what Sonabe mentioned about innovation is very much required, and that would really reduce the inequalities existing between north and south. So at this point of time, if we want to really step up the level of global growth, therefore we should really give development priorities to global south, particularly the LDCs, SIDs, and small economies. SDGs should be supported so that they can meet the mandates. Trade and investment should be leveraged for early recovery of the global economy. Greater role of multilateral institutions, particularly we should really focus in MC14, how best we can really trigger trade in FDIs, and the greater role of IMF and World Bank. Development aid and a triangular cooperation is also equally important at this stage. I really endorse the proposal by Wagle that Nalanda development dialogue should really continue to talk about the development issues in future. Thank you.
Many thanks, Professor Mohanty. Nicola, over to you.
Thank you so much. With this, Chair, I think we can wrap up this exchange and mind-opening series of insights. And now I'm looking to my colleagues. We need to rush to a bus, right? The bus is waiting for us. We have this gentleman here. Maybe you can introduce yourself while we are still together. Grab a mic.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. We'll leave for the NC Nalanda right now, and we'll be come back by 5:30. Sorry, my name is Tosavanta Pradhan. I'm a faculty here in the archaeology department. Thank you.
So we will go into the archaeology now. Thank you.